Welcome to the Vet to Vet podcast. I'm your host, Bill Fitters. Joining me as I talk to fellow veterans about their military experiences from Vietnam to Operation Enduring Freedom. This podcast is sponsored by Tugs, talking, understanding, growing, and supporting. Even big ships need a little help sometimes. Feel free to hit the subscribe button below to get our latest Vet to Vet interview. Feel free to like, share, and leave a comment below. And thanks for joining us. Sitting down with Navy Commander Art Burns. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Why don't we start off with prior to the military? What was life like, and what year are we talking?
High school. Graduated in 1975 and had already enlisted in the Marine Corps in a delayed program. So spent the summer having fun, and in August headed off for basic training.
And where was that at?
San Diego, California.
So you're a Hollywood Marine.
Hollywood Marine.
Okay.
I had to hike those hills in Mount San Onofre, which goes by another name, but we won't say on air.
Mount MF.
That's right.
Okay, and then what was basic like for you?
Quite an experience. I remember that night arriving and standing on the yellow footprints, and they give you a sea bag issue and rush you off to get your hair cut. And I remember telling everybody, throwing everybody in the shower, and coming out of the shower, there was a big wall mirror. And I remember looking in that mirror, seeing all these people with a shaved head, and I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
I had to move my head to see which one corresponded with it, and I said, okay. It's the uniformity that they're looking for in basic training.
Yep. And that I can remember that head shaving, and same thing. You kind of, when they get up, like with us, we got our I guess I'll call it our yearbooks for basic for that flight, and you're going through the pictures and you're going, I don't know if that's me or not. You know, It could be another guy. All right, so we got that head shaved, and was it kind of a shock to you the first morning?
Yeah, the whole, for several weeks it was a shock. Yeah. What have I gotten myself into?
Yeah. And how many weeks were you there?
It was a 3-month program, so 10 to 12 weeks, I forget exactly how long I was there.
And then we graduate basic, and we go where?
Pensacola, Florida.
Okay, and what did we go down there for?
Communications technician work, schooling.
Okay.
I initially enlisted with a guaranteed program for aviation electronics. But while I was in basic training, they gave us a battery of tests, and part of it was Morse code. And I don't know how, but I somehow performed okay or so on this Morse code program. And they took that with quite a few other things and extensive background checks, and figured, hey, you could go into this cryptology program if you so desire. And I figured, okay, why not? And so I was down there in Pensacola for about 8 months.
Okay.
They said it was a 6-month school. It took me 8 months. And the sergeant major used to joke about having to take our shoes off to see how much sand from Pensacola Beach we had in our shoes. So we were spending too much time on the beach and not enough learning our trade. But finished the school up in summer of '76, came home, had some leave before shipping out to Edsall, Scotland. I was part of Company B, Marine Support Battalion, stationed with the Naval Security Group activity in Edsall, Scotland, a former RAF base for World War II.
Okay. And what was your experience with your first base?
It was good. I had a great time. The local people were real friendly. Got to know a lot of the folks there, and just had a wonderful time. The culture was obviously different from America. We speak the same language, but there's a lot of words and stuff that were different, and it took a little bit getting used to, but it was a lot of fun. We had a great time there. While I was there, well, actually, back up a little bit. When I was in Pensacola, Florida, it was 8 months of training, and I thought about it, and I was thinking, I just did basic training, which to me, and still to this day, is the most intense school I've ever been to. And then I turn around and do the communication school, and I got to thinking about it. So, everywhere I go is schooling. So I thought, I need to try to get some college. because that was the last thing on my mind when I graduated high school was, college. 12 years is enough for anybody, right?
Right.
So I started taking college classes on my off time in the evenings at the University of Maryland, their European extension, and it was a good experience. I started getting some college credits, and the command recognized it, and they said, well, we should send you off to some kind of officer training program in college. And then they looked at my high school grades. And my high school grades were not very good. If I remember right, I was number 78 out of 150. And that puts me just in the lower half of my high school graduating class. And they were shaking their heads. They said, we don't have too many people trying to get into commissioning and college programs who were in their lower half of their high school class. But I had been doing the college work at night, a couple credits at a time, and it was obvious I had a great time in high school. A lot of guys didn't like high school. I loved it. Maybe I had too much fun.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get the grades I needed for college. But anyway, they found this program while I was in Scotland. There was a program that they referred me to, and I was accepted. It was called a Broadened Opportunity for Officer Selection and Training, and the acronym is BOOST, B-O-O-S-T. It's run by the Navy, but it takes Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard people, and it was conducted, that was my next duty station, it was conducted in San Diego. So I'm going back to San Diego.
Yeah.
This time I get to live outside the fence, and it was interesting. It was a great thing. What they were doing is they're trying to bring our ACT and SAT scores up so we could be competitive and get into one of the follow-on programs for college. And I did pretty well there. The only problem was I was trying to get into something called a MESEP, Marine Corps Enlisted Commissioned Education Program, but there was a big budget cut, and this was 1978. There was a big budget cut in defense, so there just weren't as many openings as there had been. And this Navy lieutenant was in charge of follow-on schools, and she said, you finished high enough here, you've finished higher than some of the people we're sending to the Naval Academy. So if you want, Commander Naval Education and Training, CNET, had an opening for me to go to the Naval Academy. And I thought about it and said, well, I don't need that boot camp again, but well, I guess I'll do it.
Yeah.
Well, she said, before you make your decision, there's a guy coming to talk to you folks from the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. And I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps. And I said, I'm a sergeant in the Marine Corps. What's the Merchant Marine? And she goes, well, that's the commercial side of shipping, where people, you either learn to drive the ship or make the ship run, either engineering or deck. And I kind of joked, and I said, well, I don't know, that sounds too much like your Navy, man. And, she gave me a hard time about that. And anyway, what's really interesting is many years later, when I was in the Navy, I ran into her, and I'll pick up on that a little bit later. Try to remind me of it.
I will.
So off I went to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. I was discharged from the Marine Corps. There were three of us that went there directly from the Marine Corps. And that's at Kings Point, New York, the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. And it's one of the 5 federal academies, but it's the one most people have never heard of.
Right.
Your obligation from there is a commission in the Navy Reserve. A lot of people opt to go active duty, and you can go active duty any branch of the military, including the Coast Guard, and a lot of people do. We have graduates in every branch of the service coming out of there. And that was a 4-year college education, and the sophomore and junior year is spent split in half. We'd go half of it on campus and half at sea as a cadet or as an apprentice on a merchant ship. And that took me in several places around the world, and it was quite interesting and a great education. When I graduated, though, the sailing jobs on merchant ships were not very plentiful. The industry goes in cycles, like a lot of things, up and down, and it was very much down at the time. I got the reserve commission in the Navy, and went to work for a couple of different shoreside entities, different facets of the industry. I worked for a liner company, which was on set schedules. It would pull into I was in the port of Savannah, and my job was to pre-stow the ship before it came in, know exactly where we were going to put all the cargo. Most of it was containers, some of it was break bulk, things that had to be chalked and blocked and, boxed in and set on the ship, on the older ships. But I did that for a while, and then I got interested in something else, and I went to work for a tanker company which instead of being a liner with set schedule, it's what we call a tramp company. And these ships are going all around the world. I supervised the movements of 2 of the ships. We had 6 total. And I would send a telex out to the captain, telling him where his next port would be and what cargo he's going to load. And that was all quite interesting stuff. Well, at some point between those 2 jobs, I did my first reserve duty, 2 weeks reserve duty as an ensign in the Navy Reserve. And I went aboard a ship for one of those weeks. The guy the captain of the ship, they asked me if I wanted to con the ship, give the steering commands and such, and I said, I'll try to, but I don't know if I speak the same language. The Merchant Marine is much more laid back than the Navy.
Oh, yeah.
So he said, we'll help you out. And so we went through that, and I had a good time with it. And he come up to me later, and he was shaking his head, smiling. He says, I can't hold back anymore. And he introduces himself as a graduate of the State Maritime School in New York, New York State Maritime, one of our rival schools.
Yeah.
And he encouraged me to go ahead and sign up for active duty. And I really wasn't happy in my shoreside billets I had, in my civilian work. So I signed up for it, but they told me, we don't need to be on active duty now. We've got plenty of people on active duty, so sorry. Well, okay, so I took that other job with the tramp tanker company. And then about 6 months later, I get a set of orders to go on active duty. And I was looking at these orders and said, wait a minute, there's got to be a mistake. I called up Washington and talked to the point of contact, and the woman I talked to said, we understand if you can't do it, but an opening came up and we saw you on the list, and she said, so, it's your choice if you want to or not. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So it was a couple months after that, I left that company and I went to the training center in Newport, Rhode Island, with the division officer school, they called it. And there I got, background in the different things I'd be doing on ship, and they sent me out to, after that, to San Diego again, where I was assigned as the boilers officer on board a frigate, a steam-operated vessel. And it was kind of interesting because my entire background in my education was to be up on top, on deck.
Mm-hmm.
And now here I'm thrown into the engineering billet, which was a little bit foreign to me, but at the same time, it was fascinating, and it gave me an insight that made me a much better ship driver.
Oh, I bet.
Knowing what's going on down in the engine room, and knowing when not to call them during an emergency, and it was really good. And I met some really great people, worked with some really fine sailors doing that. And then after that rotation in the engineering, then I did move up into the deck department, and I felt more at home up there. And I really enjoyed that Navy time, and that was on the USS Brooks.
Okay.
FFG, it was a frigate, FFG, Guided Missile Frigate 1, first and finest was our motto. And my time was up. I'd signed up for 3 years of active duty, but I'd just gone beyond it to about 3.5 or so. I was coming up on a little more time, and they were decommissioning that vessel, and so they just kind of hung on to me for a while. And then I learned about a billet that I thought would be fascinating. I was ready to get out, but I found out this billet that sounded interesting. And it was the officer in charge of the military department on board an MSC, Military Sealift Command, Boiler. These are the civilian crewed oilers that follow the fleet around and provide fuel and logistics to them. And they have a 20-person military detachment on board, and one officer, the officer in charge. And so that's the billet I took for that. And I did that for another 1.5 years, and that was really interesting because every other officer on the ship was a merchant officer, and I was the only Navy officer on board the ship.
Oh, okay.
But I also had the Merchant Marine license as a third officer.
Okay.
And one of my goals was to move on up and get my second mate license, which really worked out well because while I was on that ship and I was studying some of the things I needed to study for my license, I'd be able to go up to the bridge and pull that volume off the bookshelf that I needed and study that. So
yeah.
It worked out real well. I had everything I needed. And the crew, especially the officers on the bridge, accepted me a lot more than they did most Navy officers because of my background. And we were actually doing maneuvers with 5 or 6 combatants, and this one maneuver called for a certain change of direction, and the third mate said, there's no way I'm going to do that. I can't turn. There's a ship over there. And I explained to him how it was going to work. He would turn, and that ship would move out of his way as he made his turn. And the only reason he said he would do it is because of my background. He said, because I had a license similar to his, the same as his license.
Yeah.
And when we made that turn, he saw how it was all playing out, and he was so excited he was jumping up and down. So it was a great billet for me to have, and I think I fit into it real well because I had the merchant background, yet I was a Navy officer, and I was able to help them. So then I left that, and I left active duty, and I went back to the reserves. And at the time, the group I belonged to was all of our administrative stuff was taken care of in New Orleans, and we never reported in there. I mean, we called in and wrote what we needed to do, and we got our orders set that way without ever setting foot in New Orleans. But we were part of the Merchant Marine Individual Ready Reserve Group. So the Individual Ready Reserve is really well known, but we had this moniker, the MERG, Merchant Marine Individual Ready Reserve Group. And we would go to different places and support military sealift command and things that were related to cargo and things that, you know, merged the two together, our Merchant Marine background and our Navy Reserve capacity. And it worked out real well. I ended up, most of my time was spent at ports where they load ships. And sometimes I even worked with people that I knew, you know, from my civilian job. Some of the civilian mariners working on these ships, they would see me show up in my Navy uniform. And, oh, do we have to salute you, Art? It was a lot of fun. A couple of the stevedores down in Charleston got to know me. One guy, Roger, he was a lead stevedore, and he'd see me show up, and he said, well, is it Commander Art, or is it Chief Mate Art? And so I did a lot of that. 3 summers I did, instead of that, they had a program at the Naval Academy where they'd ask Merchant Marine officers with the Navy Commission to do their reserve duty at the Naval Academy and go out on their small yard patrol craft, a 108-foot twin screw vessel that they used for training the midshipmen. And that was a lot of fun. We would teach them, you know, rules of the road, navigation, ship handling aspects of it, things that we were real good at. And at the same time, we were supposed to be learning about how the Navy does things. Well, having been on active duty for 5.5 years in the Navy prior to that, I pretty much had that wired, and I was able to, I'd make comparisons. And I would say, this is how the Navy likes to do this. This is how they do it in the Merchant Marine. Not saying one is right and one is wrong, but just a different way to look at it and a different aspect of it. And I was able to impart, not just on the students, but on some of my fellow officers there, what they should expect when they're trying to contact a merchant vessel on their VHF radio. So, and things like that, and what they should understand about the bridge etiquette and stuff that is different from one to the other, so they can better understand who they're talking to.
Right, yeah, that's a good yeah.
It was a win-win situation, I guess.
Absolutely.
And that was pretty much it. I did that for 3 different summers, every other summer in the 90s, and then most of my stuff was, as I said, working at outports, they call them, where they load the ships, and helping be the go-between between the ship's crew and the stevedores, the people who are actually loading the ship. And in this case, the Army was in charge of the loading of the ships. But so we had an Army representative, and then we had me as a Navy representative, and the crew would have something going on, the stevedores would have something going on. Well, the stevedores would go to the Army guy, the crew would come to me, and then I'd get with the Army guy, and we'd sort things out as needed.
Oh, a liaison.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was.
Yeah.
And my last duty was down in, my last active duty was in Jacksonville, Florida, at Blount Island, where the Marine Corps loads their ships. And I had a little gator that I could drive up on board the ship and go from one cargo to the next and see how things were going. And I would park it off to the side and watch, you know, this cargo being lowered down. And the sergeant come over to me one time, and he always salute me, and I'd return the salute. And he said, "Sir, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yeah, what is it?" He said, "What exactly is your job?" And I said, "Well, I'm the liaison and blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Oh, okay, that all makes sense." And I looked at him, because I'd been a sergeant in the Marine Corps one time, and I said, "You know the difference between being a sergeant in the Marine Corps and a commander in the Navy?" And of course, he didn't know how to answer that.
Right, that's a trick question.
Yeah, so before he stuttered too much, I said, "The difference is, Sergeant in the Marine Corps has got more responsibility." And he appreciated that.
Yeah, well, certainly. So, in that position, being Navy commander, did you do any of the Shellback type stuff, or no?
Oh, well, I did Shellback when I was a lieutenant junior grade.
Okay.
When I was in '02, I went through on that USS Brooks just off Singapore. I got my Shellback initiation taken care of there. So
Now,
now in the merchant, they'll do it sometimes too, but not too much. What did happen though, it'd be about 6-7 years ago now. I was on a ship. We went down to, we loaded up in, let's see, that was Marine Corps stuff. We loaded up in at Blount Island. We went down to Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. I spent a lot of my time there on these ships in support of the military, either with Marine Corps or Army cargoes on board. And one time I was on a ship that had nothing but Air Force bombs. But this time we went down to Diego, we refueled, and we loaded on a whole bunch of Navy guys who were going to be, they were the cargo handlers. They call them the cargo handling group. And we went up to Oman for an exercise with another ship. So it was 2 Marine Corps loads that we had, and we went up and we have causeways on board that they offload and use our cranes to put those causeways in the water, marry them together, and then bring them around to the stern ramps. We lower the stern ramp on them. They can drive vehicles off and get them ashore that way.
oh, okay.
And on the way up there, of course, we had to cross the equator. And one day I went down to the ship's office to take care of something, and I overheard the more senior Navy folks were planning this traditional crossing the line ceremony they were going to do. And it's quite a tradition, and a lot of people, they start harassing one another. And so I immediately left there. I went up to my room and looked through my paperwork, pulled out my card that showed that I was a Shellback. I go back down there, use the Xerox machine, make a copy of it, walk over, put it on the table, and I said, "You're not messing with me."
Right.
Well, it backfired a little bit. I was a little embarrassed when they came up to me and said, "Well, we noticed by looking at your card that you are the most senior Shellback on the ship." That made me feel kind of old.
Yeah, yeah.
That would have been 1985 when I had, and this is now just, like I said, about 6-7 years ago. But in 1985, when I crossed the line and got my Shellback card, it made me the most senior one. So I was standing watch on the bridge, and I really wouldn't be able to get out there and get involved with their stuff. But they came up with something which I thought was really interesting. Every one of them who was they call them polywogs before they become a Shellback.
Yeah.
And every polywog had to come up and steer the ship. And for some of these sailors, their only job was to signal the crane that's moving, or do certain. They were coming from all kinds of backgrounds in this unit that they belonged to, but a lot of them had never been aboard a ship to begin with, let alone steer the ship, because not that many people on the ship do the steering. So each one of them had to come up, and my merchant counterparts, my watch team up there, I had 2 sailors on watch with me. They got a kick out of it. They put them all on the helm, and they taught them how to steer it and everything. And so that was my participation in Shellback that time.
So now, do officers enlisted have different Shellback ceremonies,
No.
or is it all the same?
In my case, we had no officers on that trip, but when I was an officer in the Navy, we were all together, and it was there's no rank involved there at all.
So it's a good unifying experience.
Yeah. It's a good get back at the division officer too. You not being a Shellback, I can't go into anymore.
No, I don't want to have to learn some secret handshake that I
Yeah.
don't know anything about. So I'm good with that. So in total, how many years of service did you have?
Total years belonging to one unit or another of reserve or active duty, 36 years.
Wow, that's quite impressive. Do you miss it?
I do. I miss it a lot. There's a lot of different things about it, both branches that I served in, and obviously my civilian job. My whole civilian job was in support of the military, so
Right.
I was always working with them, and I do miss it a lot. Well, people ask me about how do you miss it, and I say I miss it, but not enough to go back now that I'm retired.
Right. And then with the Legion, you are our service officer.
I am the Post 209 Orphanville Service Officer, and I'm also the Rock County Council Service Officer.
And what does that position? Actually, it's a very important position. explain to people what that is.
Well, the service officer is your point of contact for trying to help people out with certain things. VA benefits is the biggest thing there. And I'm not an expert on VA benefits, but I have some contacts with the county and up at the VA hospital because I'm also a volunteer up there. So I do have the contacts. I can point you in the right direction. I might not have all the answers for you, but that's one aspect of it. The other is within our post, if we have someone who's hospitalized or something, you know, I'll go visit them and that sort of thing. Years ago when I joined, we had about 8 or so of us that would go up to the VA hospital on a regular basis. Over the years, that number has gone down, and now the number is 1. And actually, for the last 8 months, the number is 0 because we're not welcome there.
Yeah,
not that we're not welcome.
because of the COVID.
Because of COVID, the pandemic, there's no volunteers at the hospital now. But when I'm up there, it's a lot of fun because most of my compatriots there are veterans, and we're always sitting around between jobs talking about you know, things that military guys talk about. And as far as the job is, I work with the Escort people up there, and what we do is
By escorts, he's not talking about people that get paid at night. You might want to clarify that.
I was a little disappointed
Right.
when I learned I was going to be pushing wheelchairs and carrying paperwork from one office to another. But yeah, that's what we do. We'll get a call from the front desk. Hey, we've got a vet down here who needs to get to this place or that place, and we come down and help them out. Occasionally, we'll have somebody who is not in a wheelchair, but they're not familiar with the place, and rather than have them wander around on their own, one of us will go down and help them get to their appointment and say, hey, give us a call when you need to get here, or sometimes by then they've, you know, learned their way around after their first or second time.
And I can say from my experience being a patient at the VA that I have been in a wheelchair escorted around when I could walk a little bit, but they, one, didn't know my way around. 2, because of what I was in for, they wanted me to be escorted. So, I'm very familiar with the escort position that's up there. I plan on, when they open back up, joining you. I think I've talked to you about it, but I think I'm available on different days than what you are.
What I was going to do here is use this to put in a plug for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And say anybody out there who's a part of our organization, Post 209, or any other, you don't have to be a member of the Legion to do this. There's people up there from all different, you know, civic groups and whatever that volunteer. Excuse me. But yeah, we could always use more people up there, and we do save the government a lot of money. And they give us a voucher. If you're up there for the day, you get $5.25 voucher at the cafeteria.
And their cafeteria food isn't bad.
Not too bad.
No. I did an interview late last night with a Vietnam vet, and he is just now, probably in the last 4 or 5 years, started to use the VA. And that camaraderie, it comes back like that. In my case, you know, I when I was in, I got to go out and have a cigarette, and I'm sitting around with these guys smoking, and they start talking about their time in service. They start talking, and it's just, it doesn't even matter if it's from a different era. It's all of a sudden it's like this. And with my the guy that I interviewed last night, his thing was with amputees. It brought back his Vietnam days. And he said at first it made him feel uncomfortable. And he said, but then as he sat down and talked to people, you know, talked to other vets, he said it brought him back into that brotherhood, you know. So, yeah, I get it with being an escort thing. It's more of a comfort level for the patients as well. You know?
We don't. We're trained to. There's certain protocols, and we don't ask them about certain things. I always try to, you know, just say, hey, you know, where are you from? And if they bring up their service time and they want to talk about that, so, oh yeah. And then if they ask me, says, well, were you in the service? I said, oh yeah, I was in the Navy and the Marine Corps. Oh, I was in the Army. And if they volunteer, we'll talk about their service time. But I don't approach them with that because a lot of them have bad experiences, and just being there at the VA hospital might be a bad experience for them, and they don't want to talk about that sort of thing. So we have a list of things that we avoid, but if they bring something up, I'll engage them in conversation, and usually just ask them where they're from, and say, oh, yeah, I've been through that town. And please.
Now, being up there as much as you have been, because I get to hear how many hours you're up there every month and what have you. I would like to clarify that it's not a handout that when veterans go to the VA.
Oh, no, that's part of theirs, the payback,
right.
the obligation. Yeah.
Some of them have this feeling that they're getting a handout from the government, and that trying to break that of and being able to say, no, you earned this.
One way to look at it, I think, is if you go to work for some big company out here and they provide you with health care, then that's part of your pay.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the VA and the military. You went to work for the military, and part of that pay was they said, we're going to take care of you.
Right.
So that's a way to look at it.
Yeah. So, and then you're also a member of the District 1 Post 209 American Legion Riders.
I am.
And it's always a pleasure to ride with you and hang out with you.
We had a couple of us for the Veterans Day parade that we had 2 days ago.
Some of us had to work.
Yeah. I remember, that's a 4-letter word.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that was great. I'm really, really impressed with what the school kids here in Orfordville did for us. We used to be able to go into their school and have a little ceremony, and would march in, bring the flags in. We'd have a guest speaker. The kids would sing some patriotic songs for us. This year, of course, we couldn't do it with the pandemic. So what they did in Orfordville is they invited us to drive by. And so we did that. A couple of fire trucks led us. We had 2 bikes and then a whole bunch of cars. I think it was close to 20 cars.
Mm-hmm.
And the fire trucks led us down. We went first to one school, and I was kind of amazed when I saw all these kids lined up, and they had the marching band pick us up right there at the school. And the marching band, they led the fire trucks, and all these kids had made up these great posters and hung them up and waved at us, and it was just really a good feeling that they would turn out like that.
And we just had our meeting just the other night, and talking with some of the fellow Legionnaires, I wasn't surprised, but that some of them got choked up and had tears coming down their faces. They were going through this line. It was that emotional for them to see that support. That usually we ask the school if we can put this on, but this year they came to us and did just they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah,
and seeing some of them signs and that artwork that they had, somebody had the idea or to collect those, and we had them all out here for us to review. So even those that couldn't make it got to actually see those signs, and they put a lot of work into those. And I can tell you, just talking with the other members and what have you, it was greatly appreciated. I mean, greatly appreciated, and a moving experience for them.
That's something I'd like to point out is being in a small town like Orfordville, Footville. I grew up in Footville, went to school in Orfordville. You kind of took it for granted back then. You didn't think much of it, but having traveled around the world and lived in some cities and other places, to come back to a little town, a small town, and have that kind of activity and support, it's just heartwarming. You don't get that in the big cities. Sometimes you get just the opposite.
Yeah.
But it's really, really wonderful to have that kind of community support. And we do the same thing. We support the community too. We have functions at the hall. We invite them to come out and use it. A lot of fundraisers are done at our hall, and we're hurting a little bit now for funds because of the pandemic, but we still have some regulars who will come out and join us for a Friday evening. We have some limited capability there. We've had a couple of private parties that kind of helped us out a bit, but not the big ones that we usually have. And we're doing our football games on Sundays.
Absolutely, they're fun.
And we've got a great donor for our brats, Jim Rackow of Rackow Family Sausage, donates the brats. We serve them up here, and we make a little money that way. And just,
And I can attest that those brats are pretty tasty.
yeah. I haven't had any complaints yet.
No. Matter of fact, I that was even people that didn't say much when we had them. Afterwards, they were just like, you know what, they were really good brats.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So if you're not doing anything on a Packer Sunday or a Thursday,
No, it's only Sundays, the noon or the 3:25 game.
yeah, come on down and you're usually working it.
Yeah, I help out.
And come down and join us and help support us and enjoy some of Rackow brats, and who knows, he may bring, he's good for bringing in just about anything to pass around sometimes. So yeah, feel free to come on down and join us for those. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm just, it's kind of interesting what you're doing here, getting us all together and talking a little bit about ourselves and what our experience was in the military. And as you know, I can talk all night if you let me.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
No, actually, I think you got to go to work, don't you? Here?
No, I don't. Not tonight.
Oh, you're not working tonight?
No, I'm not tending bar tonight.
Ah.
I might be on the other side of it.
Yeah. All righty. Well, thank you very much,
All
sir,
right,
for your not only your service as a military member, but as our service officer. I think you do a fantastic job, and I always enjoy my time with you, whether it be in a meeting or outside of a meeting or riding motorcycles or what have you. You seem to be the level-headed one out of all of us, so yeah. God knows I need that, and so
I'm the dull, boring one.
No, he's the responsible one. So again, thank you very much, sir, and we'll catch you on the next one.
All right, thank you.
Yep.